You can't just throw money at your hair, it's a waste. My mother-in-law, Scarlet, held me down, her grip unyielding, as she ruthlessly hacked away at my hair. This wasn't the first time she'd bullied me, but this act felt utterly unforgivable. I had cherished my hair deeply, and having it taken from me like this made me realize I couldn't stay with her any longer. I would return to my parents' house for good. 3 days after moving back, I received a call from my husband. His voice was laced with fury. How long do you plan on staying at your parents' house? It's your fault mom got hit by a car. I couldn't understand how my being at my parents' house had anything to do with that, but I reluctantly made my way to the hospital where Scarlet had been taken. As he explained, you left without doing anything at home. Because of that, mom had to go shopping, and on her way, she got hit by a car. Now she's paralyzed from the waist down. And what does that have to do with me? It does. You should take care of her. Absolutely not. There's no way I'm doing that. Then it's divorce. Those words had been hanging in the air, and I had been bracing myself for them. After what Scarlet had done to me, cutting off my beloved hair, there was no way I would simply agree to care for her with a casual, "Okay, I understand. Fine, let's get divorced then." My husband's surprise was evident. He hadn't expected me to agree so easily. After everything they put me through, they could have their happy life together without me. 2 years ago, I had married Anthony, a colleague from a major automobile manufacturer. After the wedding, I left my job to work part-time at a nearby drugstore. We had dreams of having children one day, but infertility had stood in our way. "Amelia, don't rush, it will happen in time," he would say whenever I felt low about our situation. Though he worked long hours and came home late, his comforting words always lifted my spirits. I managed the household chores while juggling my part-time job, which was no small feat, but I was genuinely happy to be married to such a kind man. Half a year into our marriage, we both had a rare day off. Just as we were getting ready to go shopping, his phone rang. "What, Dad?" His face went pale as he answered. "What happened, Dad?" "He's dead." I couldn't believe it. His always energetic father had passed away suddenly. We rushed to the hospital, where the atmosphere was heavy with grief. Why did this happen?" In the hospital room, Scarlet clung to her husband, tears streaming down her face. The news of his sudden heart attack hit hard. She had found him lifeless at home. Since that day, Scarlet seemed lost, barely responding to my husband's calls. "You know, leaving mom alone like this isn't safe," he remarked one day. "Yeah, she seems really shaken. If you're okay with it, Amelia, could you stay with her at your parents' house? Maybe if we all lived together, it might help her feel better." I agreed, thinking it might bring some solace to Scarlet. Thankfully, we hadn't bought a house yet, so moving was simple. As his son's wife, I wanted to do something to support her. Little did I know, this decision would lead to unforeseen consequences. The day after moving in, I was jolted awake by Scarlet's voice. "Wake up, are you still sleeping? Get up and make breakfast." "What time is it?" I mumbled, still groggy. The clock showed 6 a.m. "Scarlet, it's only 6 a.m., what are you talking about?" "Is that so? A wife should be up before 5 a.m., cleaning and preparing breakfast." I felt the pressure of her expectations bearing down on me. Reluctantly, I got out of bed and started making breakfast. Even in the kitchen, Scarlet's nagging continued. "Don't be lazy, it must be nice not having kids to take care of." Her constant reminders about not having children were wearing me down. She had frequently expressed her desire to see grandchildren, and now it seemed her disappointment about my infertility was spilling over into her remarks. "Well, that's a blessing that isn't easy to come by. Your infertility isn't your fault." Scarlet's voice dripped with condescension. "If you think I'm slacking, then maybe you should hurry up and get fertility treatment. Being unable to have a child makes you a failure." I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. This was the turning point, marking the beginning of Scarlet's relentless bullying. "Can't you even manage something so simple? You call this clean? Look at the laundry piling up. Why don't you do it more often?" Scarlet criticized everything I did. Balancing my part-time job and household chores wasn't easy. I may not have been perfect, but I certainly wasn't free enough to do everything flawlessly. A week later, utterly drained from her constant torment, I decided to talk to my husband about Scarlet when he returned from a company drinking party. "Hey, Scarlet's been complaining about everything I do. What are the household chores supposed to be, if not the wife's responsibility? Mom did it all without a word of complaint." "That may be true," he replied, "but perfection isn't possible. I work part-time too." "Stop making excuses. Is that really all you want to talk about? I'm going to bed." His dismissive attitude stung. I had thought he would be my ally, but without his support, I was left to endure Scarlet's bullying alone. Taking my silence for weakness, her harassment intensified. One day, after cleaning up breakfast and retreating to my room, I discovered Scarlet rummaging through my closet. Scarlet, what are you doing? My underwear is just plain. She held my underwear up, as if judging me. Don't go through my things without permission, and dressing so unattractively? No wonder Anthony doesn't pay attention to you. Why not wear something that catches his eye? When will I get to see my grandchild? She sneered. The question hung in the air like a heavy weight. She didn't need to say it. Every conversation eventually circled back to her desire for grandchildren. I wanted children too. I was undergoing fertility treatments, longing for a baby without anyone understanding the pain I felt. Scarlet's harsh words pierced through me, leaving me speechless. A week later, while my husband was out for a business golf outing, it was just Scarlet and me in the in-laws' house. I woke up early as usual, made breakfast, tidied up, and began my household chores, but Scarlet seemed to be in a foul mood. As I cleaned the living room, she sat on the sofa, fidgeting restlessly. "Why are you fidgeting like that?" I asked. "Your shampoo seems awfully expensive." "Oh, well, I've always taken good care of my hair. Since childhood, I've received many compliments on my long, straight hair, and I put a lot of effort into maintaining it." "Why spend money on your hair? Shouldn't you invest that in fertility treatments instead?" "The treatments and shampoo come from my part-time earnings," I replied defensively. Scarlet let out a chilling laugh. She stood up, moved closer, and suddenly grabbed my hair with a fierce grip. "It hurts. Please stop," I pleaded, but she didn't listen. With a pair of scissors in her hands, she began cutting my hair. "It's your fault for having such long hair." As she continued snipping away, I realized my once proud locks were reduced to the length of a man's. Tears streamed down my face as I stood there in shock, watching Scarlet return to her room with a malicious smile. In an instant, my pride and beautiful hair were gone, everything I had worked so hard to maintain, wasted. I couldn't bear it any longer. I packed my things and sent a message to my husband. "I'm going back to my parents' house for a while." With that, I rushed out of the in-laws' house. I would never forgive Scarlet. As I made my way back to my parents' house, I was consumed by a burning hatred for her. 3 days later, in the middle of a weekday, my husband called. "Hey, how long are you going to stay at your parents'? You need to come back soon." He hadn't reached out since I left, and now he was demanding my return. "I'm not coming back." Scarlet cut my cherished hair. "I don't want to see her face again, and I plan to stay away for a while." When I firmly told my husband that I didn't want to return, he exploded with rage. "Your hair doesn't matter." His sudden, loud voice made me pull the phone away from my ear. "What's wrong with you? Mom had an accident. Come back quickly." Even though the thought of facing Scarlet filled me with dread, I felt compelled to go to the hospital upon hearing about her accident. After about an hour, I arrived at the hospital and entered the room to find Scarlet lying in a bed, connected to a breathing machine. "What have you been doing all this time?" My husband noticed my arrival and immediately began to berate me. "It's your fault. Mom had to go shopping and got hit by a car. If you hadn't gone back to your parents' house, this wouldn't have happened." How unreasonable. What did Scarlet getting hit by a car have to do with me? I wanted to retort, but the sight of her terrible condition rendered me speechless. It looked like she had undergone major surgery. Her body was wrapped in gauze, and there were abrasions everywhere. "Excuse me, are you family?" A doctor entered the room, presumably to explain Scarlet's condition. "Yes," my husband replied, his voice shaky. "Scarlet has sustained severe injuries to her lower body. There's a possibility of paralysis if the nerves are damaged. Unfortunately, complete recovery is unlikely." "Is there nothing that can be done?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "Unfortunately, there is nothing more we can do." Hearing this, my husband collapsed to the ground, burying his face in his hands. About 30 minutes later, Scarlet woke up. "Why am I in the hospital?" "Mom, thank goodness you're awake. You were hit by a car and brought here. More importantly, can you move your legs? Can you?" "I can't move them." "Why?" It seemed that, as the doctor had warned, Scarlet had lost sensation in her lower body. Seeing her condition, my husband turned his fury on me again. "It's all your fault. You have to take care of Mom now." "Wait a minute. Why should I be the one to take care of her?" "Yes, it's tragic that she had a terrible accident and is now paralyzed, but I've suffered so much at Scarlet's hands." "Divorce?" "Absolutely not. How heartless can you be? Scarlet is in such a terrible state, and you won't even care for her." "If you won't, then let's get a divorce." He thought that by throwing around the word divorce, I'd simply comply, but to me, it was a welcome suggestion. I had been waiting for it. "Sure, I have no problem with getting divorced." "What?" My husband looked shocked. He probably never expected I would actually follow through. "But you only work part-time, right? You don't earn much. Can you survive?" It was true. My part-time job didn't pay much, and my lifestyle would take a hit. but I had savings and could manage for a while. I stood firm against my husband. Even if life became a bit tougher, it was better than living with him and Scarlet. Really? Don't come back regretting it. Regret? No way. It's better to live alone than with a husband who never listens and a mother-in-law who abuses me. As I said this, I pulled the divorce papers from my bag. I had taken them with me when I left the in-laws' house. Sign quickly before you change your mind. Prompted by my insistence, my husband signed the divorce papers. He threw the completed documents at me and spat. Here, suffer through a hard life, you two live well together. As I turned to leave the hospital room, I remembered something I needed to say to Scarlet. Oh, right, Scarlet, you cut my hair without my permission. I'll never forgive you for that. With those parting words, I submitted the divorce papers. On my way to the in-laws' house to collect my things, memories of my life with my husband flooded back, but ultimately, I realized he had only ever cared about himself. To him, I had been nothing more than a convenient housekeeper. When I called my parents to inform them of the divorce, they warmly invited me to come home. They promised to support me financially until I found a job. A month later, back at my parents' house, I continued my part-time job while searching for something more stable. Fortunately, with my bookkeeping qualifications, I landed a position at a small construction company nearby. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to get by, and I was determined to make it work. As I began to enjoy my newfound independence, one day, my ex-husband suddenly showed up at my parents' house. Amelia, please open up. I jumped at his loud voice ringing through the doorbell. My parents were out that day, and I was home alone since I had the day off. Of course, he had no idea I was free. Frightened by his sudden visit, I decided to confront him. What do you want now? Go back. Please come back home. What? No way, we're divorced, why should I come back? Don't say that. Taking care of mom is easier than working part-time. How selfish could he be? He thought caring for Scarlet was easier than my job? No way, working part-time was infinitely better. Who in their right mind would want to take care of Scarlet? Is that all? Just go back. I tried to send him away quickly, but my ex-husband wouldn't leave. Instead, he kept shouting at the entrance, becoming a nuisance to the neighbors. Reluctantly, I opened the door and let him in. Please, just this once, if we don't remarry, can you at least visit mom? His persistence wore me down, and I reluctantly agreed to visit the former in-laws' house. As soon as I entered, Scarlet's angry voice cut through the air. Where have you been? Her grating voice made me feel miserable. I thought I would never set foot in this house again. Stepping into the living room, I was shocked by the sight before me. What is this situation? Sandwich containers were strewn across the table and floor, and half-empty bottles rolled carelessly around. Scarlet's care must be a challenge. It's impossible to manage while working. What are you dawdling for? I need to go to the bathroom. Help me now, she demanded. Mom, what about the helper? Didn't we arrange for one today? I don't need those useless people, they can't do their jobs properly. Now wheelchair-bound, Scarlet had become even more difficult, lashing out at her helpers. It was no wonder she had been refused by facilities. As my ex-husband had mentioned, I understood why. Hey, you'll do. Take me to the bathroom now, Scarlet shouted when she noticed me. I felt a mix of anger and pity. Why should I help? Are you talking to me? I have nothing to do with you anymore. Ask your son. Such an insolent girl. Scarlet, infuriated by my words, threw a nearby bottle at me. In her fury, she lost her balance and fell from her wheelchair. And it's your fault I ended up like this. Take responsibility. Scarlet glared at me from the floor, but I was no longer afraid. Responsibility? Why should I? I'm no longer your daughter-in-law. I haven't forgiven you for what you did. Don't say that. I know it's shameful, but I can manage daily life in this state. Please, let's start over. Start over? Don't say that so lightly. I can't listen to you now. I managed housework while working part-time, so you can do it too. I regret not helping with the housework and always siding with mom. Please give me another chance. My ex-husband begged and apologized deeply, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. He knelt there, while Scarlet remained on the floor, glaring at me with contempt. No matter how much you apologize, I won't return to this house. Take care of Scarlet, or reconsider things with Anthony. Really? Such a heartless wife. Don't you feel sorry for me? Scarlet spat back, still unable to grasp her situation. Yeah, I don't feel sorry for you. This is your responsibility now. I'm leaving. Wait, my ex-husband desperately tried to stop me, but I was fed up. I turned to him. If you keep following me, I'll call the police for stalking, and if you come to my parents' house again, I won't hesitate to report you. With that, my ex-husband fell silent. I hoped this would deter him from bothering me again. They were reaping what they had sown. After treating me poorly, they should be forced to live with the consequences of their actions. Since then, My ex-husband hadn't unexpectedly visited my parents' house, and I was finally living peacefully. I grew accustomed to my job and even found a new boyfriend. My personal life was flourishing. One day, I received a message from my ex-husband. It's been a while, I lost my job after that. I'm exhausted from taking care of mom. I'm job hunting, but it's tough to find work, so I'm barely getting by with part-time gigs. Mom had to be hospitalized again, but she might be discharged due to bad reviews from the nurses. Sorry for the sudden message. I really regret the trouble I caused you. After reading the message, I deleted it. He probably thought appealing to my emotions would bring me back to him. Their situation felt almost refreshing. I had started a new life and wanted no more involvement with them. I had spent too much time focused on them, neglecting myself. Now, I was determined to prioritize my own happiness. If I ever married my current boyfriend, I would never live in the in-laws' house again. I didn't want to go through that nightmare a second time.